From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Returning to the ranch.
Farming saved our lives here.
How Texas Panhandle producers are picking up the pieces after the wildfires. Thinking outside the box.
That's what obtained me the 164 bushel, where I pushed the outside limits.
Helped to push the bushel boundary amid slumping prices. And what impact could the fires in Texas have on beef prices at the grocery store?
Already 6,600 cows at $2,500 to $3,000 a piece. You can figure that up. That's a pretty big number.
Adding up the losses so far, right now on AgDay.
AgDay, presented by Pioneer. What's next happens when experience meets expertise. Pioneer. What's next happens here.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Firefighters continue to work to douse the flames of wildfires burning in the Texas Panhandle. At last report, the largest of the fires, the Smokehouse Creek fire, was 44% contained. Now many ranchers are starting to tally up the losses. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins us. And Michelle, you have new information about the potential impact of these fires on the cattle market.
Clinton, it will likely be a couple of weeks before all the damage can be tallied up. But officials in Texas tell me the cost of potentially the largest wildfire in not just Texas, but U.S. history will be massive. However, the cattle death loss should not have an impact on cattle or beef prices. Nearly 1.5 million acres of land in Texas has now been burnt by the wildfires. And according to Ag Commissioner Sid Miller, the number is still rising.
It's up to the largest fire ever in the state of Texas. Probably when it's all said and done, be the largest fire in the United States, over 2,000 square miles that this fire's burnt.
Early cost estimates are in the hundreds of millions of dollars. The pictures tell the story of the loss, with over 500 barns and houses and 7 grain and seed dealers completely destroyed. Plus, there's 120 miles of power lines down, lost pasture, and mounting livestock deaths.
We've got, 3,000 or 4,000 miles of fence. That's my estimate. That's not factual, but I'm pretty sure I'm pretty close. A mile of fence is $10,000. So you can figure that up. Just the loss in fences is astronomical. Already 6,600 cows at $2,500 to $3,000 a piece. You can figure that up. That's a pretty big number. Those numbers will continue to grow, unfortunately.
Miller says water, hay, and feed are the most immediate need, with drop-off points throughout the state.
We still have our hay hotline up at our website, texasagriculture.gov. You can find it on Facebook too, Miller for Texas. So if people want to donate hay, or you need hay, or if you just want to help us haul hay, I've got a lot of hay I need rides for.
There have been over 1,000 donations to the STAR, or State of Texas Agriculture Relief Fund, including $1 million from AGP Grocery Store. Plus, more will be needed in the days and months ahead. As far as impact on the cattle market, CattleFacts and other market analysts say it will be minimal.
I'm very sympathetic. If it's your ranch, obviously it's a nightmare, a disaster. But to summarize, I would say that most of us in the trade do not think that the number of cattle that have died is enough to be a long-term market factor.
So this shouldn't further drive up beef prices at the grocery store. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
But there could be some help for firefighters battling those blazes soon, with both rain and snow in the forecast for the Panhandle. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht has more.
Yeah, overall, we're going to see more rain come in and across the United States. Now, this is Thursday at 11 a.m. You got light showers, perhaps a heavy downpour or two. There are parts of Oklahoma, but also into Texas as this moves off to the east. Now, we're not going to be completely done with the rain for those locations on Tuesday or on Thursday. And by Thursday night into Friday, more rain is going to be on the way. And this is going to be a little bit colder as well. It's a cold front. You see the notches right here and right here, indicating that cold front pushing through. On the other side of that cold front, there is going to be a break in the rainfall and the precipitation chances as another very strong ridge starts to develop. Now, we'll talk more about this in a little bit. This is Saturday at 4 a.m. A wet weekend for the East Coast as this moves to the east. But look how far north some of these lines go back up into Canada. Another above average forecast coming for a good portion of the nation going into next week. And go and take a look at your screen. It's snowing in California, or is it? Yes, it was over the weekend and earlier this week, but this is California's Central Valley, and that is not snow. It's actually petals coming off the almond trees. This picture coming to us from California. Beautiful to see again on the ground. That is not snow. Those are petals. Talk more about your forecast in just a bit.
When could we see a cut in interest rates? The Federal Reserve Chairman providing an update. Chairman Jerome Powell reinforcing his belief before a House committee that the Fed will cut its key interest rate this year, but that it first wants to see more evidence that inflation is falling sustainably back to its 2% target.
The economy has made considerable progress toward these objectives over the past year. While inflation remains above the FOMC's objective of 2%, it has eased substantially, and the slowing in inflation has occurred without a significant increase in unemployment. As the labor market tightness has eased and progress on inflation has continued, the risks to achieving our employment and inflation goals have been moving into better balance.
Powell did not express concern about the government's latest inflation data, which showed some uptick in prices in January. China continuing efforts to beef up its homegrown ag industry. Now, Chinese scientists have apparently developed a higher yielding wheat. According to a research paper published in Plant Biotechnology Journal, the wheat would be used for bread production. Scientists using CRISPR genome editing to boost the length and weight of wheat. WorldGrain.com reporting the team of researchers also found a way to control grain length. Now, China is the #1 producer in the world of wheat. The country's grain harvest hit a record high last year. The U.S. rice industry is taking on what it sees as rice pretenders, rice-shaped processed vegetables. USA Rice saying that rice is a grain, not a shape, and it's urging clarity in labeling to prevent confusion. The agency reaching out to manufacturers to label their products as riced instead of rice. And while some companies complied, others, it says, didn't. Recently, it took on a brand called Right Rice, which claims to be rice made from vegetables. It petitioned to have its trademark registration canceled, arguing the name is deceptive. Now, last year, the U.S. Patent Office granted USA Rice's petition requiring Planting Hope Brands, the company behind Right Rice, to adjust its packaging and marketing.
Push the bushel boundary on AgDay is brought to you by Tendovo soybean herbicide, raising the pre-emergence bar one clean row at a time.
With corn and soybean prices in a slump, some farmers are forced to think outside the box, looking for other crops to grow. That's the case for one Maryland farmer who decided to double crop sorghum after wheat. And that second crop sorghum yielded a whopping 164.65 bushels per acre, enough to win first place in his state's yield contest. Now, we caught up with Temple Rhodes, a farmer in Centerville, Maryland, during Commodity Classic last week. He says he first grew 120 bushel acre wheat, but with the amount of deer damage that they see to corn and soybeans, he knew there was too much risk to plant soybeans. So he opted for sorghum, planting the crop on July 1st.
I started writing some numbers down, and you figure at that time we were selling $13 beans. At that time, we were starting to get later in there. I would probably yield off of that 40 or 50 bushels an acre if I was lucky, if I didn't have any deer damage. But if I had deer damage, I'm probably looking at 20. My goal was somewhere around that 100 bushel range. I was fertilizing for 125 or so, and I was pushing outside limits on a bunch of it to see where that could go. And that's what obtained me the 164 bushel, where I pushed the outside limits.
Now, he says farmers told him to manage the sorghum crop just like he does corn, but being in a watershed, he learned the stages of the crop and when to feed the plant, even taking tissue samples all season long and inputting that information into a database. Now, last year, he grew 165 acres of sorghum. This year, he's bumping that up to 700 acres.
Sorghum does a lot of things in the ground. It has a massive root mass. We have problem in our inherent area where we can try to uptake phosphorus. With the root mass that we have on that, we can uptake a little more phosphorus into the plant than what a corn crop can or what a soybean plant can. So I think that this is an extremely efficient crop, and that's what surprised me the most.
Now, he says his biggest advice for other farmers is to educate yourself on some of these different cropping options and to think outside the box, especially with the growing concerns about current commodity prices. Speaking of prices, wheat markets continue to look for a floor. We'll talk all of our commodity prices coming up next. And later we go back to Texas, where 2 ranchers are surveying the damage following those devastating wildfires in the country. More losses in wheat and soybeans midweek. Michelle Rook is back to let us know if things could soon improve in markets now.
Grains ending mixed on Wednesday. John Heinberg with Total Farm Marketing is back with us. And John, corn, the only part of the grain complex that ended to the plus side. It was impressive considering we had new contract lows in the wheat market.
Yeah, the price action of corn over the last handful of days, including yesterday's close, has been pretty friendly. You know, even though despite we're not moving anywhere with that selling pressure we've seen into that wheat market, just kind of tells me that maybe we got a little bit of money flow into that positive side of that market here. Maybe it's driven by the demand. We'll see export sales later this morning. You know, we've been seeing some solid numbers week over week there. And, you know, just at a point too now, those bushels that had to move at the end of February there in terms of basis contracts are now kind of in the system. And the market's just kind of waiting for some more supplies. So, been very happy with the corn market, at least holding in there, even though we're consolidating basically for 7 consecutive days between 420 and 430 on that May contract.
Yeah. So the wheat market, as I mentioned, new contract lows. Has that been technical selling or is there more to it?
It's a combination of things. I mean, first off, we broke apart technically a couple days ago, followed through with that, you know, in yesterday's trade. But then we did hear some rumors that China may be pulling away from some of those U.S. wheat purchases from earlier in the year that, you know, gave that market so much boost. So we'll see if those validate themselves, obviously, as rumors. But you look at that spread between the Chicago May contract versus, you know, that July contract really moving about 7 cents wider. Kind of makes you wonder if something's going on the demand side of the equation. So now we'll have to see if that market can find some footing after a couple of very difficult days.
Soybeans, did we just see some Brazil hedge pressure today?
Yeah, I think the bean market's been holding in here actually fairly well, even though we're sliding a little bit again this week. But, you know, we had the nice turn with the weekly close higher on Friday. First time we've done that in multiple weeks. Now we're still kind of just hanging in there, consolidating, pulling back a little bit. But I think that's hedge pressure coming in from Brazil. Obviously, they're about 50 to 60% maybe on that harvest right now. Their premiums are still significantly below the U.S. in terms of the export market, but that gap is narrowing. So that's a little bit of encouragement there.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us, John Heinberg with Total Farm Marketing. We'll have more AgDay coming up.
Start off looking at that jet stream. I think it does a really good job of both highlighting the storm systems we're tracking through the weekend and also where we're going next week with our forecast. So we'll jump right into the weekend. This is on Saturday. So again, we've been talking about this all week long. A low pressure system, a trough developing Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. That's going to impact parts of the East Coast, but also the Midwest. Friday into Saturday. This is going to be moving out. You see a reinforcing shot of some colder air, but much like what we've had this entire season, once that trough moves out, a very strong ridge works in and across the United States. And when I say a very strong ridge, you see the white lines all the way back up towards Canada and then some with more of the yellow, the orange, and the red. Once again, this kind of situation, if we get any kind of weak low pressure systems at the surface or any kind of shallow troughs developing, they won't be able to cut through this ridge. That energy is going to have to come up and to the north. And you're starting to see that train take shape. Very typical springtime pattern where you get the ridge followed by the trough and then another ridge. The difference, especially with what we've seen this entire year, the difference is the ridges have become a lot stronger or are a lot stronger, making the troughs and more expansive rainfall across the United States harder to come by. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but in terms of happening all the time, It's just not in the cards. So what I mean by that, this is Thursday at 7 a.m. There's that first low pressure system working across the United States with some rain, possibly some snow and some colder temperatures. The ridge starts to build back out here towards the west. Now into next week, well, this ridge is going to keep a lot of rainfall out of the forecast as that energy again right here has to go more to the north than digging down to the south. We'll start off in North Dakota. Check out that low temperature. Partly cloudy, 4 below, high of about 18 degrees. What about Minnesota? You got mostly cloudy, high of 39, low of 20. And then Kentucky, cloudy, high of 59, low of 47.
Feed costs are way down this year. We have the latest cattle profit tracker from drovers coming up next. And later, the cost of rebuilding following a devastating wildfire. We'll meet 2 ranchers starting the process in the country.
Drover's Report on Ag Day is brought to you by Neogen. Discover your possibilities and enhance your herd's potential.
Cattle margins are nearing the break-even point, while packer margins remain at triple-digit losses. That's according to the latest Sterling Beef Profit Tracker. Cattle prices combined with slightly higher feed costs resulted in an average loss of $176 per head last week. That's compared to a $14 profit a week before. Beef packers saw their margins improve by more than $60 per head, but still average losses were estimated at $106 per head. Now, cattle last week carried a total feed cost of $376 per head. That's up $4 from the previous week, but down more than $200 from the same time last year. We first told you about this yesterday, the final rule change to the Packers and Stockyards Act. Now meat industry groups are weighing in. The change would give contract farmers more leverage in business with meat packers and integrators, but several trade groups argue the changes introduce unnecessary regulations and costs. NCBA releasing a statement saying, quote, NCBA's concern with this regulation has always been based in the rule's unforeseen impacts to standard business practices. We continue to urge USDA to ensure this rule remains focused on its stated objective, with which we wholeheartedly agree and does not stray into extraneous unrelated subject matter discussed in the proposal's preamble, end quote. The North American Meat Institute claims the new rule does nothing to encourage competition while attempting to give USDA new power to, quote, exert federal control over business contracts. When winds are high, there's little that can be done to control a wildfire. What happens after the flames go out? That's the hard part. We'll meet 2 Texas ranchers making those decisions right now, next. Farmers and ranchers in the Texas Panhandle are working right now to assess the damage and add up the losses. The Texas Farm Bureau caught up with 2 ranchers who battled and survived Texas's largest wildfire.
2006, yeah, we've experienced that, unfortunately, and we've experienced 2017, 2018. This smokehouse fire, I would say, was very similar to 2006. Very similar. The way it moved, the speed, the destruction.
The day prior to this one, they were fighting a fire at Jeff's. Burned part of our ranch there and fought that into the night. Got up the next morning and it just progressively kept working this way. And Jeff and I were in communication. He said that it's probably about time, what he's hearing on the radio, that, you know, get cattle congregated to fend off the fire. And we made the decision to stay here. We'd gotten the cattle to the wheat field here behind the house and here around the headquarters. Bill, Jeff's son, said, hey guys, I think this is the best spot we're gonna defend. And we had a tractor with a disc on it, and I ran the disc around here, and as you can see, kind of tore off the ground. But to save the headquarters, I make the joke that we're all in the ranching business and sometimes give a hard time to farmers, but farming saved our lives here. The disc and the wheat field, I don't think these headquarters would be here.
We're moving the cows to some other leased grass we've had that didn't burn, so we're just getting them off this black. We're still a little bit worried because we're maybe not even, that place isn't even out of the fire danger, but you know, it's better for the stock if we can get them off this burn, get them out of the smoke, get them out of this dust, let those cows calve on some good ground. We've probably lost about 25 to 30% of the ranch to LaFours, the north end. This entire ranch burned, those were John grew up here. It's all the grass is burned here.
Yeah, 100%. We're 20 calves, to my count right now, short here, 5 to 10 grown stock. Bulls fared okay. One of our biggest losses here was our saddle horses. We have some here at the headquarters that we were able to get pulled together, but we have another pasture that we rest some saddle horses. I'm waiting on the vet to get out here to help me assess that, but that doesn't look very good.
And our thanks to the Texas Farm Bureau for helping to tell the story of what's going on in the Panhandle. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a good day out on the farm country.